What's happening, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Comic Book Weekly. I'm Mike Spider Slayer, and next to me, I got the wonderful cat comic Uno.
Hello, guys.
Yes. So once again, Brant's running a little bit behind, but he will be here. He's like the day sleeper, so he like sleeps during the day and he works all night. So he's like opposite from everybody. So he's running a little bit late. We got a great topic for you today. We're going to be talking about decades of comics, right? There's a tons of comics throughout the decades. Some decades better than others. Some people have nostalgia for certain decades of comics. So we'll be discussing about that. And of course, we'll be talking about the comic books that came out and a little bit of the news. There's just not a lot of real comic book news right now because it's the beginning of the year, So yeah.
Holidays. Although I will say I did add a couple more pieces that I think we'll at least have a discussion about.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and Steve says, "What's up? Haven't been able to do one of these live streams in a month. So, thank you for joining us live. We're very excited, and a lot of people are talking about their collecting when they started collecting. This Juan says, I just started collecting comics last month. LOL. I've been enjoying it so far. And that's what's great about comics. I think anyone who ever tries to gatekeep people be like, if you didn't start collecting comics when, we're this age, then, you're not a true comic reader. It's like literally, if you've read one comic, you are a true comic reader. And if you've read 30 comics, doesn't for 30 years, doesn't mean you're a comic book expert. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly. I mean, and like I said, once Brant gets on here, we'll have the discussion more. But it is a funny thing because everyone, a lot of people will say, I'm sure that my favorite decade of comics is whenever they started collecting comics, right?
yeah.
But then as you expand your, I guess your reading, you might find books in the past that you're like, man, these books were made in like the 90s, and like these ones might be my favorite, So it sometimes it has to do with just really though when you start. So I don't know. I'm curious to hear what everyone will say, but there's a lot of comments already diving into it. So
A lot of 80s, 90s. I think it'll be interesting to just talk about the decades in general and like what decades we've read in general too. So that'll be pretty cool. We also have Serenity in the comments here. Yeah, a lot of people are saying they grew up with the 80s comics. So that'll be interesting. I feel like the 80s is probably a set of comics I've read the least of. I'm trying to think. Because you read the Silver Age stuff. I read a lot of that. 70s, you have a lot of important comics that came out then. But also, yeah, I think the 70s and 80s, I would say I read the least. I read a lot of 90s stuff, obviously,
wow.
2000s. Now, I've read a lot of stuff. But yeah, I'm trying to think of what was like pinnacle 80s comics.
I mean, when you look at it, there were so many comics that were created in the 70s and the 80s, like just
Spider-Woman,
so
Shield.
many characters just in general. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what's crazy about it. Like, I think you had the Punisher that was introduced, and you had like, Wolverine that was introduced, and you look at so many of these different types of characters, and it's huge. And then I mean, it's a lot and a lot of stuff. Steven says I started late collecting when I was like in my 20s, so the 90s. Wish I could have gotten into comics sooner. Love reading comic books. And then we got
Whenever you get into it.
yeah, and then we got a super chat from Comic Toby,
Thank
who
you.
says, "Hey guys," and got the $2 super chat there. So thank you, really
Yeah, we have
appreciate that.
another comment from Infamous. Even though I didn't read comics during the early 2000s, I read a lot from that era, and it's my favorite. The Ultimate Universe, Marvel Knights, Marvel Max, Grant Morrison's X-Men. Yeah, there's a lot of good comics during the early 2000s. All right, well, let's get into some news as we wait for Brant here. You want to talk about the new Ant-Man trailer? I purposely didn't see it because I'm like, the movie's coming out soon. I don't think I need to see the last trailer of Ant-Man.
It wasn't like it didn't really give away a lot of the story. I could say that. I think it looks good though.
I'm excited for it.
I think this might be I mean, the way to kick off Phase 5 when it comes to the Marvel.
See, I thought Black Panther was great, so I thought it already kicked off with
I
that.
do
So
too. I
yeah.
thought it was good too, but I think like propelling this universe forward, I think this is a good movie because it's introducing you to the next big bad. It shows you a little bit more of what Kang is, and um, it just looks interesting, and I'm excited to see it, and to see um Scott Lang kind of just like he's desperate in this movie, right? And I think this is going to kind of pull at the heartstrings a little bit because any person that has a son or a daughter is can relate to this because time goes by fast, okay? And when your kids grow up, it's like this. Like it seemed like yesterday my son was like 10 years old and my daughter was 5, and now my son is 15 and my daughter's 11, and that's what this trailer plays with. It plays with time. So I am really excited for this. And again, you can see that desperation from Scott, and this was a really good trailer. And I'm looking forward to this movie.
And I feel like Ant-Man's the one franchise, well, not one, it's one of the few franchises that does well at, you don't have to be an MCU fan to enjoy it. Like I have a group of friends I usually go to the movies with, and pretty much everyone says no to the Marvel movies except me and Phil. But this was like kind of the one movie where a few of my friends were like, "No, I want to go see it." And it's like, "No, you don't have to fight me. I'll go see Ant-Man." It's kind of become a joke of like, "All right, I'll go see Ant-Man." Because it feels like yes, it's for the bigger universe of Marvel, but I think Scott Lang as a character just feels a little bit more accessible than a Doctor Strange or I'm trying to think of what other characters came out recently, but Doctor Strange mostly. Thor, like those characters feel so less accessible than this average Joe Scott Lang.
Yeah, I think Scott Lang is a much more relatable character, right? And I think it's funny because a lot of people originally, just like the Guardians, didn't know a lot about Ant-Man, and probably including myself, until you get to the movies and you learn a lot more about this person, and you realize that he's got a daughter. He's just your average Joe Schmo. He's a little rough around the edges. He's humorous, and it's just like, oh, I like this guy. He's got that Peter Parker mentality to where it was just like he's very relatable. And when you go see a Marvel movie, you're like, oh, I like him. He's actually kind of cool.
I definitely agree. We actually also have a question from Parker Luck, who said, "Here's a question outside of the topic. What was it comic wise that got you into comics to begin with? For me, it was Spider-Man coloring book where he fought Doc Ock. Honestly, I would say it was the shows. It was like me watching X-Men Evolution, getting it, I love Spider-Man because I like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. I was like, oh, he's cool. Read this. But my dad got me into comics. So like I had the avenue for that, but for comics that I liked, like things that were because of me, is because of the shows I watched.
For me, it was just a huge amount of things that probably led up into comics. It was just when I was a kid, my first thing that I was introduced to was like Star Wars, the movies. I was real super young when I saw it re-released in the theater in the 70s or whatever it was, or maybe in the 80s before Empire Strikes Back came out. And then like I used to watch like Thundarr the Barbarian, and I was like, from Hanna-Barbera, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then like my uncle was a comic shop manager, and he left me a pile of books, and I just read the shit out of them. Not really read them, but just flipped through the pages of them and looked at the artwork. And I was like, oh man, this is pretty cool. And then I fell in love with Marvel through Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. That was the first, I want to say, comic book TV show that I ever watched. And I fell in love with the first villain I ever fell in love with was the Shocker, because he was the first villain that I saw on there. And so that's just how I fell in love with it. And that's how I really my first, I always say my first girl crush was like Angelica Firestar, because she was the first girl next to Peter that I noticed, and I loved the relationship between those three characters in that story. And I was like, man, she's kind of cool. Like she's like one of the guys, and I love that. And that's really the beginning of how I started to fall in love with Spider-Man in general, too.
So it looks like Infamous Mike Manhattan has a question. Have you guys ever seen the Wildcats animated series? I have not.
No, I actually haven't. I actually heard of it, but for some reason I never watched it. I don't know why. I don't even know when it was on, if it was like on like I don't know, like UHF at the time or on Fox or something like that. Like I don't even know.
It was definitely before my time. So unless I was hunting for it, which I don't think for Wildcats I was, I did not find it. But let's get into another topic here, which is Spider-Man Noir is not going to be in the sequel for Across the Spider-Verse, which I think is fine. It looks like they're going to be focusing on so many other characters, and Noir was not. I don't think he was the character everyone was like, yeah, oh my god,
See,
it's.
he
I
was
mean,
voiced
people
by
like Nick
Nicolas
Cage,
Cage. So
exactly.
it's like, did they not pay Nicolas Cage enough money? And is that why he is
Oh, he
not
said he
in it?
wanted to be in it. He said
Really?
I think it was just a story thing. He's just like, "Yeah, I'm not in it." I don't know why, you know? I mean, it'll be like a surprise cameo, but I honestly think it's just because there's so many other characters to focus on, and they weren't really the main characters, like him and Penny Parker. They were fun, but they're not Gwen, they're not Miles, who they're gonna focus on, and now Miguel and stuff like that. So interested to see where it goes. I love that movie, so I'm very excited for the sequel. Willie Belcher asks, what's your favorite Spider-Man series? I don't know. I think every run has something to offer. Like there's parts of the JMS run I really like. There's parts of Dan Slott's run I really like. There's even parts of Nick Spencer's run I like, especially the beginning. I don't know if there's a run where I'm like, that's the perfect Spider-Man run. Besides, maybe I would say Ultimate Spider-Man. I probably would say that.
Mine is obviously the first volume. That's where I have most of. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have every Spider-Man comic from pretty much almost 300 on. But my favorite run is from McFarlane to all the way through, I want to say like 400, right before Ben Reilly really came around. Because that was like the time where I was really heavy into Spider-Man. And when Venom got introduced, and again, McFarlane was doing the art, and then it took over from Eric Larson, who did a really good job at the time. I just really got immersed into the Spider-Man world at that time, just learning about all the characters. And I love that. I really love that run. There was just so much good stuff that was attached to it. And then I read stuff when I was younger, like Kraven's Last Hunt. Didn't fully understand it at the time, but I knew it was like really good and dark. And that's why I loved it. And that was my first time introduced to Spider-Man actually wearing a black suit. I was like, man, Spider-Man's wearing a black suit. I'm like, why? Because, you're like one of those kids at the time, and you're just like, you can only pick up like random comics here and there. So like, this was just the issue that I had in my hands. And I'm like, Spider-Man wears a black suit. Whoa, that's cool, So, but yeah, I would say anywhere between, right around when McFarlane started in 298 and all the way to like 400 was my favorite period for Spider-Man.
So, infamous Mike Manhattan thinks it was about the TV show, so we can answer that as well.
Okay.
TV shows, I mean, I feel like you have to go with the 90s Spider-Man, but I feel like there hasn't been a perfect Spider-Man cartoon for me. I'm very excited about this new one from Disney Plus. I know a lot of people like the Greg Weisman Spider-Man. I think it's, I haven't seen every episode of it, so I can't say, oh, that's like my favorite, but it's fine. Yeah, I guess I would go with the 90s one, but that, it's dated at this point. I would like to see a new one to be like, that's the one.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough for me, like between the 90s and again, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, just because that really kind of launched everything for me. And just, of course, when you're a kid, everything is so heightened, everything is so like awesome, you know. Um, and I'm probably just going to say that the 90s Spider-Man show is probably obviously the better show. There was so much story involved with that, and that show lasted quite a while. So yeah, I'll probably go with that one.
Also just a message from Brand. He's rebooting his computer and he said just keep going. So we'll catch him up when he comes on. But
Okay.
another question was from I think Mike Manhattan, who says, speaking of Spider-Man Noir, did you guys see the trailer for Rinfeld? Nicolas Cage plays Dracula. I did because I went to go see Megan and it was attached to that. And it looks fun. We're all like, okay, we'll go see it because we have AMC stubs. So,
My son
we'll go
actually
see
went
whatever
to go see
movies.
Megan. He had a birthday party to go to with his friends,
Mhm.
so he was like he went to go
Did
see
you
it.
like it?
Yeah, he said he liked it. He said it was cool. I heard that um the movie was supposed to be much gorier than it was, and
They
then they
have another
realized,
cut.
yeah, they
Yeah.
realized that, oh, there's going to be a lot of teens that are going to see it, so they had to dumb it down a little bit. But they're going to be releasing a uncut version of it, so I'm looking.
I
I
would
want to
love to
see it.
see the gory
I
version.
wanna see that. Yeah, I'm looking for like, so I haven't seen it yet, but when the, unrated version or whatever it is come out, I'll be on top of that for sure.
It was good though. Like even though it wasn't gory, like I was like, oh, this feels like a start of a new franchise. It felt fresh enough. It was creepy enough because she's a doll, and you kind of have some uncanny valley situations going on. She sings, which was weird. It's just like it's a fun movie, and it's short. It's like an hour and a half, and I love like slasher scary movies. So I was like, oh, it
Right.
was just like a solid movie you don't expect to come out in January. So I recommend it. I do think the gory version would probably be even better because that was one thing I was missing. I'm like, oh damn, I kind of wish I saw that kill a little bit more than we
Right.
did. Because a slasher, that's what you want to see. You want to see the
Yeah,
kills. So
exactly.
and it took a little while to get there, but I also understand like you gotta have an intro horror movie to people, right? Like having a PG-13 movie actually helps to bring another generation of horror fans. So there's not everybody's gonna watch
There
Halloween like I did when I was
Yeah.
13.
There is a lot of horror, like, there's a lot of horror movies that are, like, PG-13 these
Mhm.
days, like, I feel
The
like
Grudge was.
yeah, I feel like in The Ring, and just like there
Mhm.
was like a lot of those movies in the 2000s that were like that. That
Yeah,
just
when I was
totally
growing up, there weren't like a ton of rated R movies when it
right.
came to horror, besides the remakes, like the remakes of Friday the 13th or Halloween, they were rated R. But they weren't really I mean, Halloween, I guess, was rated R for the sake of gore, but I was gonna say I feel like it was more rated R for the sake of just the how many curse words are in it. Like I feel like they cursed a lot in the movie more than the goriness. And also Halloween, the original Halloween's not that gory. It's
Right.
a very gory movie. So and I believe that's rated R. We have two super chats that are so let's read Supreme Omega, $5. The 90s is the best for DC. Wally, Kyle, Vertigo, Milestone, best version of the Bat family with Nightwing, Oracle, Tim, Steph, Cass, Azrael, and Huntress. Yeah, I think the 90s, I think early 2000s is where it kind of hits for me. Because I feel like all those things you mentioned found its footing in the early 2000s.
hmm No, it's funny because I don't. The only thing I read 90s in DC was Kyle Rayner, and that for me actually was really good. So I loved every issue of that series. So and I do have some like Nightfall stuff, Batman, you know what I'm saying? So I have some of that stuff, which was kind of cool too.
Yeah, there's a lot of good Batman in 90s. I like Supergirl has some good stuff. I agree. Teen Titans had some good stuff. Another super chat, thank you so much from Comic Toby, who says, I opened a Gemini yesterday and the comic smelled like meth. I'm going to keep it just to have it cleaned and pressed someday. Yeah, I can't say I know what meth smells like, so I'm curious how you knew. It's like this is it. This is the meth
You got
Gemini
some
mailer,
Breaking Bad going on in there with your
right?
fucking comic books.
That's very
Undercover like
funny.
meth labs under your comic shops.
That's so funny. And then Sweet Exorcist says, Kat, since you're a horror fan, have you seen Smile? And what are your thoughts on it? I have seen Smile. We've seen every horror movie. Literally any horror movie that comes out, we go see it. Um, I didn't love it. I'm so tired of jump scares because I'm not scared of jump scares. I have so many friends that are like one of my best friends, Luke. We go see a lot of horror movies together, and I got so like desensitized by jump scares because he'd literally jump on my lap when the jump scare happened. So physically, I had someone on my lap while it happened on screen. So now I just see jump scares and I just don't care.
There's
And they're just not interesting to me.
so I'll get jumped every once in a while, not all the time. But it's just certain things about like movies like that just like creep me out or give me like the goosebumps or something like that.
Mhm.
It's just weird. There will be certain things that trigger me that way, Like, I don't know. When I saw that commercial and I saw that person smiling, I'm like, dude, that's just creepy. You know what I'm saying? It's just,
It
I don't
was, but it
know.
wasn't creepy enough. It didn't sell the
Yeah, I
movie. I
haven't
saw
seen it.
and I think you saw Brant saw
Brant did.
Barbarian.
Yeah.
But Barbarian, like I continue to say that's the scariest movie I've seen in a really long time because it's about I think scary movies if you build your pacing really well and you like build suspense. And I've said this before too. Like I saw Jackass Forever and I was like, that's the scariest movie I saw this year before I saw Barbarian because like it built tension like in your stomach, it built like that what you want to feel in a horror movie. And like if you have a jump scare, it's like, all right, it's not
Right.
tension. This is just like it's just a jump scare. It's cheap.
Yeah.
But like a jump scare like the Quiet Place, I think does a great job at like doing something different with the jump scare, which was very prevalent in early 2000s horror.
I I like I love horror movies, but my wife hates them. So and then for years since we had young kids, like I can never watch them. But now my son is starting to get old enough to where we can watch them, which is a good thing. And my daughter is now showing interest in like more scarier things, like or just a little bit darker stuff. Like she watched Stranger Things, for 11-year-old. That can be intense at times.
Yeah.
And she likes like she watched Wednesday, so we watched Wednesday, and she's thinking about going to Halloween Horror Nights next year. So, and then she watched like Michael Myers. She watched Michael Myers. I was watching it during like Halloween, like on Halloween or whatever it is. And she's like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "This is Michael Myers." And then she's just sitting there watching it. And I'm like, "Okay." And she was just like, then she was like, "I want a Michael Myers shirt." It's just so
That's
hilarious.
so
Yeah.
funny.
It's so
I feel
funny.
like
Yeah.
Michael's not. It's so interesting because again, you have to see like what is scary for people. And someone mentions like, oh, if you build tension, it's psychological. That's like how it becomes scary. Because I never consider like Halloween a scary movie. I guess if you don't like gore, it's a scary movie. And again, it kind of builds tension, but it's just a fun movie. It's just like it's cool to just kind of see what the next step's gonna be for Halloween. I did see another question, which was, well, first Serenity asks, what is a Gemini? It's a Gemini mailer. So it's just like
It's where
mailers
the
that
comic sits in. Yeah.
yeah. So when they mail out the comic, it's a good way to ship comics. And then Willie asks, are you going to see the next Scream? So Scream is my favorite horror franchise of all time, because it's brilliant. So of course I'm going to see Scream, but I didn't love the last Scream, so I'm curious to see where it goes.
I just saw Violent Night with my brother Michael this past Sunday. It was very great for Santa being a bad at. Dude, I saw that movie too. So same thing.
I heard it was fun.
My daughter was watching that too, and and my son, and it is just so over the top. It is so hilarious, just the gore that is in that movie. We were freaking dying. It is hilarious, man. I loved it. It's so there's like no point to the movie. There's just none whatsoever. But just the gore that happens is absolutely amazing.
I heard it was better than expected. And that's kind of what's been interesting because January movies are known for being like utter shit. So it's kind of interesting to see like movies like Megan or even Violent Night come out where people are like, yeah, that was fine. And Megan, especially where people are like, wow, this movie made a lot of money and no one really expected it. Just because it's like, it's just a weird, fun movie. It's almost, I feel like it's targeting Gen Zers. If you watch it, it's so TikToky. Like the
Yeah.
dances,
Yeah.
the humor of the movie is very Gen Z, and that's why I'm saying like this is such a cool building block for the next generation of horror fans. And I think it's such an important movie. I think people are gonna look back 5 years ago and see like, oh wow, Megan, this weird movie that came out in January was actually such an important movie for Gen Zers, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. I mean, eventually, yeah, you gotta target that audience because they're the next people that are going to be watching it.
Yeah. And I think that's cool. And it definitely will be a franchise movie too. So
Yeah,
I could see that continuing. All right, let's get into the next thing, which is Berlanti is actually staying with Warner Brothers. And I thought this was interesting because the Arrowverse is ending, Flash is ending. What the hell is he gonna do at DC? Like I know he might have be doing a Green Lantern show, but it's just like, man, I don't know what to expect with that, I guess.
I guess time will tell. They'll just say, "Okay, you can stay with us, but we don't know when your next project is going to be."
I, and I also think he just built this empire. So maybe they're like, oh man, we got to do something with the TV stuff of DC. Let's bring this guy who made a lot of money for us to try
Right.
to shape something. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But yeah, last media news piece is that, I guess this is connected. Stephen Amell is returning for Green Arrow in the final season of Flash. And if you guys don't know what happened to him in Arrow, he died. So it's like, oh, okay, why do we need what? Okay, I
Yeah.
guess we'll see what happens there.
I guess it's just to go like kind of like a full circle type of thing.
I guess, but I feel like his story was pretty over. I'm like, all right, I guess the Arrowverse in general is pretty over, but we'll see what people think of the last
Could be a
season of Flash.
flashback, some type of flashback thing.
It could be. Hopefully, for Flash fans, whoever is still keeping up with the show, they'll enjoy it. But so that's all the media news. Let's get into some of this comic news. So let's talk about the new Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a new team. They kind of teased it. And in the first arc's gonna be called Groot Fall. I'm so tired of Guardians titles. Unless I hear is like the
There's not
brilliant
like an
Guardians title.
overabundance of them, though.
But how many times have they rebooted Guardians and they just never know what to do with Guardians? Like, when's the last time Guardians was like, whoa, we got to read Guardians?
In all reality, though, you can say that about any comic book these days. They reboot everything. It's just another volume, and that's
But
just
do you
all
think
it
it's
is.
been good recently? Do you feel like there's been a good Guardians volume?
I don't remember the last time there was a Guardians book. I think Al Ewing did it, or was it Donnie?
Yeah, Alan
Cates
Ewing.
doing it?
I think
Did
Alan
Al
Wing did the
Ewing
last
take over for
Guardians.
Donnie Cates? I think that's what it was. I'm pretty
I
sure.
believe Alan Wing was the last one.
Yeah.
And honestly,
That's
the
when I
last time I
dropped it.
enjoyed the last time I enjoyed Guardians was Bendis. Weirdly enough, I actually liked his run.
I want to see what it's about. I'll check it out. It seemed like it had Mantis on there, and it had Star Lord, and but there was no. You didn't see Groot, and they're anticipating that Groot dies. I don't know. It could be interesting. So we'll see. So, Randy, do you like the last Guardian book?
That's good. I'm glad you enjoyed Guardians. Another comment I saw was from Sweet, who says, I feel like Berlanti should have gone the head of the DC job over James Gunn. He earned it. But Berlanti also only really was doing the TV stuff. So I feel like James Gunn, was very known for his directing, his writing for movies and making Guardians successful. So I feel like in that regard, James Gunn made sense to take over for movies.
Yeah, it's a different monster, I think, to do a movie than it is to do a show. In my opinion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're very different.
Yeah.
So let's get into the next topic here, which is all right, let's talk about the Hulk. So Marvel's ending Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley's Hulk run early. We'll see what Donny Cates is going to be doing next. But I guess more of my question is, who do you want to take over Hulk?
I don't know, man. I don't even have a clue. This one barely got off the ground, and I'm happy that Ryan Ottley is going to at least finish the story arc, and then it's ending. I couldn't tell you. I really don't. I mean, we've had so much Hulk, different people that have written
like Greg Pak
in the past 10 years. But Greg Pak already wrote Hulk.
He
you
did,
know?
but he was rewriting, and we got Brant on now. But he did do that new volume of his Planet Hulk. So it's like, oh, maybe they're trying to set him up to do something more with Hulk.
I don't know. And then you had the Red Hulk, and then you had all the different other Hulks that was written. Like there's been so many different stories, and I felt like Al Ewing did a great job with doing something original and different with Hulk. But now I just don't know, what do you do with the character? And I feel like Donny Cates was trying to do something, and then obviously he's dealing with personal issues. But I don't know who to get, because it's just like, who are you going to get that's going to do something different with that character? I don't know. Do you have an idea, Brant, what to do with the Hulk? A new creative team. Is it going to be you and Kat? Right?
That would be,
I hope so.
that would be lovely. I could do something cool with the Hulk, maybe. I don't know what you do with him because, like you said, Planet Hulk was so big, and a lot of people loved Immortal Hulk, and it feels like with a character like Hulk, you have to do something outside the box and do something different to make that character interesting, because just doing the status quo just gets old really fast.
Yeah. Right. And that's why they've done all these, over the years, all these different personalities.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can only have Hulk smash so much. There's no character growth. And so I feel like we've had the most recent Hulk come out in Titan. I think that was his name in the most recent run. And I don't even know if they're going to get a chance to really explore that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Have a couple. Oh, go on.
Go ahead. No, that's all I was saying.
I was just gonna say, Steve says get Peter David back. Sadly, I think he's still sick, so I don't know if he'll be writing anything anytime soon. I do want to answer JP's question a bit, but yeah, Hulk. I think it's hard because he was so built up with Immortal Hulk. You're like, how do you top that? And I don't think anyone has the answer of how to top Immortal Hulk. It's kind of like Venom too. It's just like, oh, well, how do you top Donny Cates Venom? And it's like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like Planet Hulk did sci-fi and kind of sci-fi fantasy, and then like Immortal did horror. We've seen superhero, we've seen villain and monster. Where do you go from there? Like, what's left? What do you do next with the Hulk?
So another question we do have, and this is from JP. Man, it sucks to say this, but what do you do if you want to enjoy the comic book story and not force yourself to get into a book? Sorry for the troubling question, BTW, but I haven't been enjoying a lot recently. Honestly, I think it means you have to find something different. So if you mean like, oh, I'm not enjoying this superhero book, maybe you need to take a break from superhero books, or only pick up a few superhero books and branch out to, again, maybe independent comics, webtoon, Kickstarter. I just think it means you gotta try something different.
Or just drop the books that you don't read. You know what I'm saying? Or not enjoying. Like,
but I think their point is that they're not enjoying like anything they're reading right now. Gotcha. Yeah, so I think it's like that. I would just get outside your comfort zone.
I would exactly. I would then just drop anything. Don't force yourself to read it. Take a break from it. Sometimes you just need a break, right? You just need a break from it. Read independent books, like Kat said. Go outside, webtoons, Kickstarters, whatever it is, and just read these different types of stories. And sometimes you might just get enough from the independent books, and you might be like, you know what? Maybe I don't need to go to superhero books anymore.
And like if it's titles that you just like, or characters you love, like Spider-Man or Batman and stuff that we don't typically drop. If it's that kind of character for you, keep getting it. Just put it in the pile and take that break, like Mike said. And there's so many different genres, different types of comics out there today that surely you can find something, or just like step away from comics altogether for a few weeks and just kind of recharge. And I think we all need to do that from time to time. So
the one thing is as much like say shit we'll talk about, say about Spider-Man or Batman or whatever it is, when it's not good. I like having those conversations though. You know what I'm saying? That's the fun of it, is talking about those comics. Do you wish every single comic was good? Yeah, absolutely. But you're never going to get that. There's always going to be certain things that you don't agree with or disagree with, but that's what makes the hobby so much fun, and not which makes good discussion, you know. So
And why we do shows like this is that we could kind of continue that conversation, because I feel like, you know, if you just read it yourself, I can understand why it's disappointing, but then, you know, you get to join us, or you get to go to your comic book store, and you get to like expand that conversation past just reading the book, which I think is very fun. And at least what I enjoy about the hobby. I don't know if I would be reading as many comics as I do if I didn't do this show, or if I didn't continue the conversation past me reading books on Wednesday. You know, I think I'd be very behind on comics, or most comics, if I didn't do this.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Brant, what we discussed, just in case you wanted anything to discuss, is just we did all the media topics. We did about the Hulk, obviously, and Guardians, and then I'm going to talk about 2 more topics. But is there anything from those things you really wanted to add your 2 cents to?
I didn't get to see the Ant-Man trailer. I didn't even know there was a new one. The only thing was I just wanted to say I think it's cool that Stephen Amell's coming back for the final season. That's a nice touch, you know, because that's where the Flash started. So, you know, have it end with Arrow in there as well. So cool.
And JP, just to continue what they were saying, I think indie titles are the ones for me. I build up from those until I get my interest back into normal books, for sure. I think that's great. And then a lot of those indie creators might write your next favorite Marvel or DC book, and then you're like, oh, I really love A, B, and Z. Let me go check out their, you know, their run on this. And that happens a lot of times. So that might end up getting you into mainstream books. All right, let's get into the 2 other topics, which is about Free Comic Book Day. But Spider-Man gets a new suit. This was revealed today, so I'm gonna show it to the crowd here.
I'm looking at it, and it's like a mixture between of like his new suit and his old suit.
Yeah, it's not too different. It's just kind of yellow.
It doesn't look bad though. It's
well,
like
the goblin. Yeah, the goblin thing is the big thing.
Yeah,
there's a goblin
like
glider.
His glider is much different, like, you know, but his suit is, I don't know. It looks like, is it more black than say blue? Or is that just maybe the shadowing of his suit? Like if you look at that cover there.
I think it's showing that he might be turning more towards the dark side, because like you said, it is a darker suit, and he is riding a glider. And he's also, it's orange, kind of like a hobgoblin or even just a Green Goblin situation. So it looks like he's embracing this goblin side.
He's got the webs under his arms, which is a more traditional like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I like his over exaggerated eyes. I like when Spider-Man has that. I think that's kind of cool. Yellow is interesting though, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
he's still got the bubbles on his arms.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of fits working for Osborn and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's funny to me when, you know, like there's a big news story. Spider-Man gets a new suit, because we all know, we've talked about it a million times, it's just a temporary thing, and he's always going to go back to that classic blue and red. But no, I mean, I think this one's fine. It's not like a drastic change. It fits with the whole, you know, goblin theme that he's kind of going for. It'll be interesting to see why, and, you know, like what the purpose of this particular suit is.
Mark II.
It feels like it has a Dan Slott feel to it too, because look, it has that little spider in the back. Yeah, it feels very more high tech. When he was rich.
His current one is high tech too, but it's a lot more bulkier than this one. This one is, I feel like, a more of a mix. So I don't know. And then we notice how we don't even talk about Venom, who's on there, which is Dylan.
Yeah, he just has chains.
He needs to get rid of those dumb chains. You don't need that. It's so dumb.
It's like, what'll make Venom cooler? Make him Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
It's something for sure. Well, let's get into our last topic here, which is the Uncanny Avengers. Looks like it's returning. They're kind of making some hints to it for Free Comic Book Day. And you know what I say? I didn't like the original one. Don't care about this one. There's nothing about the X-Men that really interests me right now.
I mean, they teased this a while back, and you know, I think we even did a title of the show based on that, or we were thinking about it. Maybe we changed it at the last minute. I don't remember, but yeah, this was kind of a no-brainer when they put out this teaser image, which was the cover. that's where it was headed, and it was like, okay, whatever. We'll see if it's better this time around. But I agree with you. It wasn't. I thought it was okay. I didn't like hate it. The former one that had like Deadpool on the team and stuff like that. I thought it was fine. It was.
That was a while ago too, man.
Yeah, it was. It was.
I want to say that's going back probably 10 years.
Has it been that
it's
long?
been a while.
Yeah,
Wow.
at least.
It was around the time when everyone was getting the Phoenix Force, I believe. It was like right after that.
Avengers versus X-Men, all
It
that
has been
stuff.
long. So the beginning of our show, then around there.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I don't think they've done another since. They might have, but I don't think so.
It seems like that was yesterday to me. It's so weird.
I know.
I think you're right. I think I was still in Kentucky.
Ago.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. That is so crazy.
Time definitely flies. We were talking
man.
about that earlier about Ant-Man, but yeah, that's all the news, guys. So we're gonna talk about our main topic, which is the decades of comics. Mike, why don't you intro that?
Yeah, so now's the time, guys, where we're going to talk about it. So you can put all those comments in below. I know some of you guys are putting some stuff in there before, but let's go ahead and talk about, your favorite decade of comics. There's a lot of wide range age of people out here. So that, your favorite decade could be the 70s or the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, what was maybe your favorite TV shows. What was the things that got you into comics? There's all kinds of things that we can discuss here. I'll kick it off. I think I have actually 2 decades that I really enjoy when it came to comics. So the first decade for me is the 90s. Just because that's when I started really reading comic books and buying comic books for my first time. You had all those cool Spider-Man comic books that were out, and just there was so much hype behind comic books. Obviously, it led to to the burst of the bubble. But it was just like before that, like comics were so exciting, selling just millions of copies and hundreds and thousands of copies. Like it was everywhere, man. And it was just awesome. And so many great stories. And then I want to say that my second favorite decade would be the early 2000s, because that's when I got back into comics again. And then I got really introduced to like really independent comics. So like Walking Dead, Invincible, Chew, those things just opened my mind up to a whole completely different world. And then obviously that's when we got introduced to YouTube, and I was able to do something that I've always wanted to do, was share my thoughts on comic books with people. And you could never do that before without getting your ass beat, or you had like 2 or 3 people
or
that you
going on
were
a
friends
forum.
with that secretly were like comic friends, But now you had this platform where you could go on, find people that were like you, and you could talk about comics. And that's what led me to you guys. And we've known each other probably again since like, man, it's still been so long. It's
been like a decade.
It's been at least a decade.
A little bit longer, I think.
Yeah,
actually. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's insane. And we've had some good comic books in the 2000s. And I would really want to say is when these hardcore independent books started coming out. Like Walking Dead was something that just was like that blown my mind at the time. Same with Invincible. I was just like, wow, these comics are like super, like they push the envelope and there's just something different. And there was Mark Miller's we had Kick-Ass, and then I read Nemesis at the time, which is another volume getting ready to come out tomorrow. I mean, there was just so many great comics, and I was like, wow, this is so much fun, man. But yeah, I really enjoyed that decade. But 90s is the thing that really kicked it off for me. Just a lot of stuff from there. Even though those books aren't worth anything or whatever, they just hold a special place in your heart,
So I'm going to sound like a broken record because Mike totally stole everything I was going to say, pretty much. Yeah. So, I mean, the 90s is when I like really started getting into comics. So, of course, that's, near and dear to my heart. It's when I really got into Spider-Man and New Warriors and the Image launch and all those books and all. It was just exciting. And there's a lot of memories that I have from comics in that decade that will always be like number one, because that's what got me really into comics. And then like the 2000s is when, same as Mike, I got out of it for like 5 or 6 years, and then I was brought back in. It's told the story many times by CrossGen, and then new GI Joe at Image and Devil's Due and stuff like that after it had been gone for several years. And then that kind of slowly kind of got me back into the Marvel and DC world, and kind of went from there. And so yeah, I think there was a lot of cool stories at that time too. It was a weird time because like Marvel was, teetering on bankruptcy and all that stuff, and they were trying a bunch of different things to try to get some buzz, but at the same time, it was like the movies were starting to flow out, and so there was excitement building back up for comics and stuff like that. So some cool stuff came out in that era as well. So yeah, but Mike's
I feel like. No, I feel like you guys are on the money, which is interesting because obviously we all come from, different decades of growing up. But
right.
I would say early 2000s. Like that's what I liked a lot of the 90s stuff too, especially if you look at DC stuff. I enjoyed like Teen Titans, Supergirl. And then for Marvel, I love the early 2000s stuff. Again, how do you get better than Ultimate Spider-Man? There's so many great things like that. I even have a special place in my heart for some of the JMS Spider-Man stuff. So and then 2010, because again, that's when we kind of started our thing and when we started doing this stuff. And I feel like comics, we were getting a lot more indie books, and indie books were being taken seriously. We had more digital books. Like I appreciate every decade, but I feel like those are the three core, but especially 2000s, 2010s, where it's like, all right, that's kind of the decade I love. And again, nothing to take away from the decades that we're in now for comics.
Right.
I think every decade has something different to offer, and I love seeing how the hobby grows and how the industry grows.
Yeah. This jogged my memory too. Here it says, I guess this one went away. Sorry. Why is it not showing up here? There we go. New 52 era took place in the 2000s, and I think it was one of the reasons the 2000s were great, because the whole universe has gotten rebooted and came out with amazing stories like the Quarter Owls. That's another thing, yes, that happened in the 2000s that got me into DC comic books. As a Marvel guy, never read any DC except Kyle Rayner and a few Batman comics. That DC New 52, I think personally, and people could disagree with me all day, but was probably one of the best. Maybe I'm choosing my wrong. I won't say it was the best decision that they've made, but it was a good way of getting new readers, right? They didn't half-ass it. They completely redid it. And they just introduced a completely new line. And it was good up until a point, but it got me so excited about DC Comics, which I never did before. And I fell in love with so many of those stories back then.
Yeah, it was a bold move. Yeah, go ahead, Kat.
Oh, no, do it. Go for it.
Yeah, I was just saying, it was a bold move that I don't think anybody saw coming. And obviously mixed reactions at the time and afterwards. A lot of people hated it all the way through, especially hardcore DC people. But like Mike, I didn't read a whole lot of DC. I'd read more than Mike, but I hadn't read a whole lot of DC at that point. So when that happened, it was like, oh, jumping on point. I can dive into this universe, at the very beginning of everything and figure out which of these characters that I really like. And it pulled me completely into that universe. And from that point on, it was like, it wasn't just a Marvel guy. I was like, I'm a comic guy. I like all this stuff, So yeah. What were you gonna say, Kat?
I was gonna say it's just an interesting time because it so depends on who you ask, right? Because some people will say the New 52 destroyed comics, because they're like, oh my god, they changed the continuity and now DC changes their continuity. Like it's your bed sheets. But there's so many parts I love about the New 52, and I think that's something the three of us always agreed on. And maybe because we were more Marvel fans than we were DC fans, but
Right.
there's something to be said about Batman. There's something to be said about Animal Man, and just being able to get so many new people into comics. And I don't think there's ever been a wave of comics like the New 52. Where you've got so many new readers into comics. And I think that's really important. All the industry has ever been trying to do ever since was to do what the New 52 did. Maybe not in the execution, but why do you think DC continues to always try to do their version of the New 52 and always fail? Because they can't spark that again. But it was also the creative teams they had, the new voices like Scott Snyder, but then also having old voices to bring characters like Batgirl with Gail Simone. There's just so much, there's something really special about the New 52 and that time. Definitely not saying it's perfect. And like you said, definitely not saying it ended well. But I wish that I miss when comics were gutsy like that. Like, has DC or Marvel been gutsy like that since Superior Spider-Man or the New 52, which came around the same time? I miss the days when you heard a news piece, you're like, what did you just say? That is shocking. And I honestly, the last time I probably heard that was Bendis joining DC was the last time I was probably shocked by a news piece from either Marvel or DC.
And that went wrong, but I mean,
that went differently. But
when you went for New 52, when you're trying to say, oh, we're trying to get a new generation of readers, that was the way to do it. You know what I'm saying? Because there was characters that I would have never read before. So like you mentioned, Kat, Animal Man, Swamp Thing, Blue Beetle, Aquaman, Nightwing, Red Lanterns, Green Lanterns, Green Lantern Corps, just all those other books that were out there that they haven't been out for years now. You had Green Arrow, you had the Justice League, you had them all, and yes, some of them were unsuccessful, but I credit them for at least trying, and now
and succeeding in some points. They literally did. They did succeed in a lot of comics.
But just something along the way just went completely wrong. And it's just a shame now because I find that they find themselves reeling, trying to figure out what to do, and
trying to make a New 52 again.
Yeah, but they seem like they're trying to reboot things all the time. Like you had metal, and then you had death metal, and then you have, that was a big deal, and now you have this. That just
you also have to see where has DC been. They've been under different ownership by 3 different companies in 5 years. So I don't think it's DC's fault as much as I want to blame one person. It literally is just that just as they were getting their footing, they got bought by a different company.
Yeah, and you gotta imagine that there's some kind of money people influence in that too. It's like back in the day, Crisis was really popular. Let's do another Crisis event. The same kind of thing. That reboot was really popular. Let's do something like that, and it's
and Marvel's only has had Disney to listen to in these last years, so they kind of know what not saying Marvel's doing everything perfectly because I don't think they are, but I think they have consistency. With DC, it's just look at their movies, look at the Warner Brothers situation. It's just that they're listening. There's so many people got fired, so many new people are there. They're just like, I just think it's more of a company structural thing that's happening right now.
Both companies are lacking, though. They're both lacking that spokesperson now. Like Marvel had Stan Lee, and it's
look, they even had Joe Quesada at a point, they at least had a name.
Exactly.
And it's just like, and then you had Dan Didio that was there for the longest time, and a lot of people there would blame him why DC did not do well towards the end, and that's why he obviously got fired. But do you think they're in any better position now than they were before he got fired? I don't think so.
I think I think because Dan Didio was before Discovery, and then Discovery happened. So it's more than one thing. I really think that's the issue.
Yeah, and it's also easy as us for us as readers and people on the outside to say, "Oh, it's that guy that caused all the problems," and when
Yeah.
really it's probably like a whole bunch of things and a whole bunch of
Accumulated.
people. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and years of
Absolutely.
that accumulation. Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, so when it comes to like the 2000s, the New 52 was great. I thought it was a great introduction to a lot of characters for a lot of people, you know. So that's another reason why I liked the 2000s too. So that was a good comment right there as well.
I did want to address this real quick. Best decade: 60s, next 70s and 80s. This is the worst decade. I think it depends on what you read and what you like. Because for me, like, and we've talked about this before, for indie comics, I think this is a
The best
phenomenal
ever.
decade. Yeah, and it's like, and I still think there's some positives in Marvel and DC as well, but I mean, I get that. I get that argument, and I get, being disillusioned with it, especially if you love the 60s, 70s, and 80s, because it's a completely different type of storytelling these days. But
Yeah.
And I want to answer two questions here. And obviously we've talked about this a lot, but just for newer viewers, but the real for real, Willie, it's an expensive hobby to stay current with all comics. And I think
yeah,
it goes back to like where we are as a society right now. Like it's an expensive thing to do anything, and that sucks,
It
and
does
it
suck.
just like everything that is going up in prices, comics have to go up in prices
Yeah.
too, because it's a business.
Comics are
so.
always that cheap medium, I mean, that's
Mhm.
what it should have been always. And
until they
now,
realize they can make money on it.
yeah, and now they're like, oh, hey, well, we can make books $3.99, $4.99. We can make variant covers that charge the price. We can make 1 in 50s. We can
Yeah.
you make a foil cover. We can make a special edition. We can make it uncut. We can do all these different versions of these comics. So, it is what it is. They're a business. They got to make money too. It's like anything else. The good thing is you don't have to collect everything. So if you budget yourself, then it's not expensive.
It's hard because you want like
You want a lot.
the fan and the reader and the collector, and you want everything, right?
Yeah.
But you got to bring that in, unfortunately, because it's just not feasible for anyone, really.
And I do want to answer Tevia's question. Does the comic book industry need a reality check? I think the comic book industry needs a reality check when it comes to the direct market. Because again, and I always say this, like we as Wednesday Warriors, we as commenters here just really talk about the direct market, which is not even the most successful part of comics right now. It's legit not. It is actually the least successful part of comics. I mean, if you're looking at things happening with Diamond and everything, it is not where people are making money. So if you want to say, okay, well, how is Scott Snyder making money? How is all these people making money? A, they got a really good deal with Substack, and B, they're making TV shows and they're making movies. So that's how they're able to make their money. Or they had a really good deal with DC and Marvel. But yeah, do I think the comic book industry needs a reality check? Yeah, the direct market does. But do I think other places do? No, I don't, honestly. I think there's other places where things are growing in such an awesome place.
Yeah, it's such a complex conversation that as far as the direct market goes, because you're selling to retailers, you're not selling to fans. I mean, obviously the retailers are, but they're the ones making the decisions, and that determines sales charts and all that stuff. So it's a completely different dynamic than any other types of sales of comics. So I don't know. I don't know if I don't know exactly what you mean by reality check. Like, what exactly are you asking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How would you fix the direct market? I would say the pre-order system, because I think what really sucks is that I would say there's so many comics out there, but I think the idea that the comic store has to make a decision about how many comics they need to sell without actually seeing how many comics they can sell with it.
Right.
Because like, look at something like Stray Dogs, right? Stray Dogs was such a big hit and no one knew it would be. So, and then the comic book stores didn't actually buy enough of Stray Dogs because no one knew it was going to be the hit it was. So trying to change the pre-order model, I think, is the way to do it.
It's a gamble.
Oh, it's a total gamble.
Yeah,
and
it's a total gamble.
It's like you got to make educated guesses, and you got to, but it's all a guessing game.
Because it's like, So for superhero comics, right? You sit there and you say, okay, what do you know are the ones that are going to sell? Batman, Superman, say X-Men,
They've been proven to. The
right? Because
numbers have
they
proven it.
have the proof. But when you have independent comics that don't have any track record, what do you do?
Right.
Do you order 10 copies? Do you order 2 copies? You know, it's just like,
Yeah.
what do you do for this? So it's like it's a total gamble, you know. So the only thing that you can say is it's hard because it's like if you are a comic book shop, you create an email for your loyal customers and put out the FOC list and sit there and say if you want this comic, you have to pre-order it. And that's what sucks because it's just
And
like
it's complicated for anyone to get into comics by doing that because
Yeah,
it's like, oh
it
my
is.
God, it's a chore to get something that's just like, oh, I gotta figure out this
Yeah.
FOC. Like, why is that should be my job as a customer? you
Yeah,
know?
Right.
It-
But I'm
that should be my job.
It's like my comic shop sends me an email every week and they highlight probably what they think is obviously the most highly anticipated books. So they'll highlight like DC ones, Marvel ones, and then independent books as well. And they even go they'll put Vault on there, they'll put Boom, they'll put those ones, and then you just highlight what you think is cool. They'll even put variant covers, blah 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 blah. So yeah, it sucks that it has to be the customer's job, but it keeps that shop from over ordering those
Yeah.
books.
For
And, I
sure.
mean,
No, nothing
you
against
know?
the shop on that.
Yeah, no, I mean it's hard for them too because they have to make money to stay in business. So they
Yeah.
have to, I mean, more times than not, they're going to take the chance on the books that have known creators or from a known entity and that kind of thing. And that's totally understandable. It's hard all the way around. And it's just, it's a little bit of a, I won't say broken system, but it's definitely fractured.
Yeah.
And no one knows the right answer. Because again,
Right.
like what's been
Yeah.
really interesting, and I'll continue to preach Kickstarter, but like Kickstarter is a pre-order system in a lot of ways, but
Yeah.
you get the exact numbers of how someone wants to pre-order something. And if you could kind of meld both systems of the pre-order system of Kickstarter and the direct market and actually get the exact numbers you need to pre-order by the customer, it might be a little easier because again, not everyone knows about FOCs. Like they just don't. So when you're going into a comic book store, you don't actually know the exact order of what someone's going to get. And that's especially if you're getting a random customer come in and not some full list. Tevia did ask about sales numbers in general, but I mean, I don't like the increase of prices and have comic book sales actually have the actual sale numbers. Again, the increase of prices just has to do with printing numbers. Like what you have to think about is how much does a comic cost per unit? And I think, and obviously as customers, we shouldn't have to think about that, but it's just like, it's 101 of business. It's just, that's why the prices are increasing. It's not because of the comic book sales and how much they sold. I'm in the regard of how much they sold, when you print more comics, the unit price gets cheaper. So in that regard, yes, then maybe like a Spawn that sells really well could bring the unit price cheaper because they're selling so many copies. So in that regard, you can think about that. But like the little indie, like a lot of them are not making money.
No,
So,
and that's
like
why
a lot
they
of things you
charge,
think are making money aren't making money.
right. That's why they got to charge $5 a book because so like for instance like Pat Shan's book, Gangster Aspirissa. I think that was a $5 comic this week, right? To where that was just a normal page book, black and white, right? $5. And you look at a Marvel book, same page count, colored, everything else, $3.99. So, but that Marvel book is probably going to sell a lot more units than this.
They're also
Pat
ordering
Shane
a lot more copies, which means their per unit cost is lower.
Right.
Yeah. But like Steve Kimpton pointed out, like paper costs, everything has gone up. We talked about that, and everybody knows this. Everything has gone up. But like in the printing world, paper, ink, all that stuff has increased as well. So eggs.
Eggs.
So I mean,
they'll give you less eggs. You won't get a dozen anymore. But also that's why digital sales are so important because it costs nothing. But then people are like, well, why aren't those cheaper? Because then print comics would not exist anymore because you could make them cheaper. Honestly, for us, like on a Kickstarter platform, we actually do make them cheaper. We don't make it the same price as a physical copy most of the time
Yeah,
because you can.
it's funny when digital comics first started coming out. I was one of those that like, why don't they just do the digital for $1? I mean, it's not cost them extra printing costs. And then when I got more into the creating side, I was like, oh, it makes more sense now. You still got to make money on it, or you're gonna end up with a loss. Yeah,
exactly.
And also, if let's say your book's on Comixology, Amazon's getting a percentage of that. If you have a product on Amazon, I mean, this is free information. You can look it up. If you have a product in Amazon and you're giving your objects to Amazon, to their fulfillment center, which is how you get on Amazon Prime, you have to give 30% of your profits. And that's not including like how much it costs to make something, because you also need to make revenue and profit are two different things. So already you're giving a 30% portion of your profits to Amazon. So think about it in that way, because people will be like, oh, well, how about Comixology? It's like, well, Comixology is still taking a huge chunk of a percentage of those digital sales.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's sorry.
Real quick.
Let's start moving on, because it is 11:30. I just want to take a couple more questions and then top off this topic and get to the comments.
Okay.
Says, how does FOC really work? LOL. I order monthly from an internet store, but they run out of some books if I order too late. Well, that's the purpose of the FOC, because you got to order it before that particular date. And if you don't order it before that date, then you're not guaranteed to get that book. You got to hope for it to get it on the rack. So you have to order it before a specific date. So that is the point of the final order cutoff, because then they can't order the books anymore. It's too late. So until after the fact, if it's not out of print. So that's kind of like how it works.
And then just to answer Tevia's question, as someone who writes webcomics, what about webcomics? Still got to pay the artist and the letterer. So obviously it won't go into prices of how much it costs for Slice of Life, but like you still got to pay those people. So even webcomics cost something.
Yeah. And most like popular webcomics make their money from like product sales after they've built the audience up. Yeah.
Merchandise. You think ad revenue is going to be, it's like YouTube. Like you think ad revenue is not going to be your chunk of how much you make on YouTube. It's the sponsorships that are going to be how you make your money on YouTube. So same thing for Webtoon.
All right. So Brant, Kat and I talked about this earlier about, what got us into comics, like TV wise, right? You said, Kat, you said X-Men Evolution and, what was there something else? Spider-Man. Yeah. And Brant, so what got you? Was there a show that helped you get into comics also?
Oh man, I'm going to date myself. Well, I mean, obviously G.I. Joe, but no, like even when I was younger, like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Yeah, I mentioned that too.
Yeah, so that was like my first introduction to superheroes and Spider-Man and all that stuff, and that's where my love for Spider-Man began. And I loved Firestar and Iceman and Spider-Man. The whole thing is cheesy, and as poor animation is, if you go back and watch it now, I was all into it then. And then Spider-Man would show up on like Electric Company and stuff like that back in the day, and so that was kind of like the thing. And then of course G.I. Joe, Transformers, that whole thing, and then as the 90s and stuff, the Spider-Man and X-Men cartoons on Fox. Were like really big, and I got totally into those as well. So it was just those general things, I think, and just like geeky shows like I don't know, going back to like Knight Rider and stuff that's more action oriented, more towards that same kind of vibe that superhero comics would be. So that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I told Kat like the Shocker was my first like Spider-Man villain that I liked, because that was the first episode I ever watched of that show, which was a lot of fun. Like I remember he turns his belt and he would like use his things, and he caused the building to collapse, and a piece of it fell on Aunt May. And like, I remember that whole episode, and I just remember how much I was like, man, that Shocker guy is freaking cool, So there's so much there that goes into it, but yeah, Knight Rider. I totally forgot about Knight Rider until you said something. That's so funny. I used to watch it. And X-Men is the animated show is the whole reason why I decided to start reading X-Men, because of that cartoon. So
Nice.
yeah, a lot of great stuff, a lot of good things, so many great decades of comic books. That's why there's just limitless material to read, and it's all a little bit different. 60s, like you said, is different. 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. Now it's a lot of the indies and digital and webtoons and Kickstarter. So there's definitely something there for somebody. Let's hope that comics continue for a very long time. I know people have different opinions on them, how they are, but again, there's people out there that have never read comics before, and this could be their jumping on point. And for them, today's comics might be their best comics. So, yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man was the first for me. Bendis forever. I agree, man. One of the best series you've ever written.
Yeah, I'll also say Archie played a big part in getting me into comics.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
More
yeah,
comics
Archie.
too. So,
yep, absolutely. Okay, so let's get into the comics. We're here. I don't know, guys. What did you think about this week?
I liked. Let's see. I think I liked 2 comics a lot.
2?
Wow.
Yeah, those
That's
are
rough.
a
I
lot.
thought I was
I like
bad.
2 comics a lot. Let me look. There's a lot of comics I didn't like.
I didn't love anything, but I really liked a couple, maybe 3, and then I don't know, my top 7-ish were I enjoyed those.
I think I really enjoyed my number 1 book. Yeah. I liked my other top 4, and then, or no, maybe my really top 6, and then, I don't know, the rest were just okay for me this week.
There wasn't anything that was oh man. I will say I started reading some books for tomorrow, and I do have some books where I've loved, and then there's some I was oh, I don't love this. So I think next week's gonna be interesting.
Kind of scaring me a little bit.
Okay.
I read 5 books, and then there's 2 where I was I really don't like this, and then there's 2 that I liked. So we'll see.
All right, so let's kick it off with new story arc, Batman issue 131. We found out where Batman ended up.
This is one of the books I did not like this week.
And you were right? Crime Alley in an alternate universe, which we were right about that. I did not like this book.
I was so disappointed. I was just okay, you have this great ending from that last arc, and then you have this who cares Elseworld. It just felt so unsatisfying. I was so, and even the art I don't think was very strong for this issue.
No, because Jorge Jimenez is no longer on the book for right now. I heard he's coming back in June. He's doing that so that, again, I keep mentioning this Nemesis book. He does the artwork for that book that's coming out tomorrow. And Nemesis is like an evil Batman. That's what he is. And it's very gory type of book too. But I agree. The artwork wasn't very good. The Elseworld story, I was why can't we have Batman just in his regular universe? Why does he got to go Elseworlds? Because now nothing means anything, right? It's of course, Bruce Wayne doesn't exist in this Elseworld story. And, Bruce Wayne makes his appearance here, and Selina finds his picture. He's oh, he's alive here. I was just and then you got this Red Mask character that's supposed to be maybe Red Hood or Black Mask, one of those 2 guys, which is probably Robin or something like that. Harvey Dent's like a Bane character, or he's all jacked up on Venom. It's just I don't know. I didn't like this issue. I'm hoping Chip Zdarsky does something special to make it good. But I don't know. I was definitely disappointed by it.
Yeah, same. I was worried that I was going to be the only one. I was just I'm just not feeling this. And, I don't think I even liked the whole failsafe thing as much as you 2 did. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I wasn't over the moon for it. But
I like the ending of it. I remember the middle. I was whatever. But I was the ending is he's falling out of space, and he just, what happened to Batman? It was just such a good setup.
Yeah. Yeah. But this was night and day. This was just a total letdown for me, and I was really disappointed with this issue.
It just didn't even feel like whatever happened in the last arc happened at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
The only thing that I can say that I somewhat enjoyed was actually the backup story, because it's got Tim actually searching for Batman. And I
I
like
agree.
how they
Yeah.
tied that in, because you're spending extra money for that book. And at least the story has to do with what's going on currently.
Yeah, and him not accepting it too,
Right.
that he's gone. And I did like that. That was good. That was the best part of the issue.
Yeah, the backup part. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
we'll keep enjoying that part. All right, so that's Batman. So all three of us agree that we did not like that issue. All right.
Here we
So
go.
I am so curious to hear what you guys think about this.
Because I know what you thought about it. I watched Worthy once.
Oh, did you?
I did.
I
Sorry.
would say I think I was pleasantly surprised by the ending of this. I was like,
Yes.
all right, well, whatever.
Okay.
Like the buildup was fine. And I was like, but it felt different than other issue ones. I felt like it was building something. I was like, all right, cool. There's a supporting cast they're building. And then Viv comes up. And I'm like, all right, you sold me on issue 2.
Also, I don't know if either of you realized that this was Darcy's appearance, like Darcy from
Yes.
the Thor movies.
Yeah, Darcy was also
So-
in it, which I was like,
yeah.
that was pretty cool too.
Yeah, and there's like some kind of mystery to her, because we find out at the end that she walked through the door, but she hasn't told, Scarlet Witch why she's there, what she needs help with, and all that. So there's a little bit of mystique there too. So I like that.
So I know we actually never said the name of the title. So it's
Scarlet Witch.
Scarlet Witch.
issue 1. So
Yeah.
I personally, I didn't like this book. I was bored to death by it. I mean, I liked Darcy, how she was in it. I thought that was kind of neat. And I liked the cliffhanger. Everything else in between, I just didn't care for. Like, I get why she has the Emporium
I agree
and
with
what
that.
she's trying to do, but we spent 6 pages of them just sitting around drinking wine or drinking or eating or whatever it was. We go to this corruptor character who is the villain, and it was boring. It's just like, this is what you're going to offer people for a #1 issue for this new Scarlet Witch series. Like, I get it's a setup issue. I understand that you're trying to develop whatever it is that's going to happen in the future. But if your first issue is this slow, what are future issues going to be like?
But
You know?
I'll give it that it had a tone, and that's something I was shocked by. So many of these issue ones, especially from Marvel, have felt so similar to everything else. It's like, oh, okay, I think Miles Morales is a great example. Monica Rambeau is just like, they fight this big thing, this big bad, and then a group kind of comes together, and then maybe there's a somewhat interesting cliffhanger. This felt like, okay, at least I've never seen this book before with Scarlet Witch. Again, I didn't love it either. I do think there's a lot of boring elements, and I don't know if I'll keep this book on my pull list, but I was surprised at least by it. It felt a little different.
So why couldn't they just do the lead-in story with Viv? You know what I'm saying? Like,
They wanted
why,
you to buy issue 2. They're like,
why,
"Yes, we need
They
you."
wanted
why
the
do
cliffhanger.
that?
Yeah.
But see, that wasn't enough. Like, Viv has me, like, the only thing that makes me think about buying issue 2 is Viv at that very end. And I'm really like, I'm 1 second, I'm like, yeah, I'll buy it. And then the next second, I'm like, maybe not. But then I'm thinking, like, well, if I want to get the true effect of this story, I'm going to have to at least buy issue 2, right? So I don't know. And you know what? I'll tell you this. I like Sarah Pichelli as an artist, but
I don't think it was her
her
strongest,
colorist and the inker on there didn't do her work any justice.
I actually really like the art. I thought it was
Did
really
you?
nice.
I
Yeah,
just
I did.
felt at certain moments it just didn't fit like what they were going for. I don't know.
I didn't
don't
think
know.
it was her strongest. I don't think any of it was her strongest art. But Brant, what are you in the middle? Did you love it?
I didn't love it, but I did like it. I did enjoy it. I wasn't bored by it. And I didn't feel like it was a whole lot of sitting around. I get that. And I know there was a lot of talking heads at certain points in the issue, but I thought it moved along at a decent pace. And I think I would have come back even without the Viv thing, just because I like Darcy as a character. I like that mystery aspect of it. I liked seeing Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver interacting again. It's still on her redemption tour, basically, of, trying to get past all that stuff that she had done. So I thought there was enough there for me, at least, to come back. but the Viv
Mhm.
thing really sold me on it. So
Yeah, I'm so curious about Viv.
Yeah.
I'll at least give it issue 2. But if it's drawn out, I'm
Yeah,
only
if
getting
it's-
issue 2, and that's it.
yeah, and I understand that completely. It definitely didn't make my top 5 or anything, but I did enjoy it.
Gotcha.
And then Jeff asks, why not do a Scarlet Witch series leading to Doctor Strange? I have a feeling the series was delayed at some point because I also feel like the timing of the series is so weird. I'm guessing they tried to have it earlier than happened because you also have Sarah Pacelli on art, so that probably took a while.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so then let's move on to number 5. Brant, what was your number 5?
Mine was Gold Goblin, number 3. I thought this was a decent issue, and I thought there was some really nice emotional moments with Norman. But the scene where Normie asks, "So why did you hurt my dad so much then? If you were such a good person," and just like that breakdown of you see the single tear, and then him saying, "I don't know," and that whole thing. And we had a few moments like that in this issue, and I thought those were really strong. And I mean, the action part of it was like okay, whatever, but like him losing his temper and stuff is like old Norman kind of seeping in a little bit and stuff like that. So, little seeds planted there as well. And, then the bonding moment, which I did not expect at all with Jack-O-Lantern.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
But he is really trying hard to do the right thing. And
which
I
is
thought
different, which is cool.
Yeah.
Different story from Marvel. What?
Yeah. And I thought that the ending was kind of neat because he was teetering and thinking about literally dropping Jack-O-Lantern from actually killing him because he was losing control of his grandson being killed. And he realized, he took a step back and said, if I kill him, I'm going to be no different than what I was before, and to him to have that thought process and that guilt behind him, it makes him a powerful character right now, emotionally. And I like that struggle. I like seeing that behind him. And personally, when it comes to the Dark Web, this is the best title that is out there right now.
Yeah.
Because it's adding some type of character growth. Whether it's permanent or not, it's still yet to be determined. But for right now, it's an interesting story.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that every issue for me has become better. Like I remember the first issue, I'm like, oh, I don't know how to feel about this. I've seen, I don't know how much this is adding to Norman's story because I've seen it in Amazing Spider-Man. But every issue kind of adds a layer, especially with the Queen Goblin stuff. And the art is good. It's just gritty enough. And I'm sad it's only 2 more issues left of this one because I'm like, oh man, I feel like it's just been finding its footing. And like I was just implying before, it feels different. This is something we haven't really seen with Norman, or at least totally where he's like feels guilty. Like we see Norman pretend to be the good guy, but never to this extent. So I just like that. I don't know what to really expect from the story.
I also like in the beginning too how he's in search for Queen Goblin because he says, if I kill her, then my sins will die with her.
Yeah.
And
so
it's just like
that darkness. Yeah.
That's kind of dark there, Norman. You want to be the straight and narrow. You can't go around thinking about killing people like that, So
what's interesting about Jeff's comment here, I feel like Gold Goblin is the only part of Dark Web that matters. It's not a terrible story, but honestly, there's just way too many parts to it. Just don't care about the X-Men Miss Marvel. I'd agree with that, but I think honestly, Mary Jane is honestly the big book that actually matters. The Gold Goblin, if you read this, it's a good Norman story, but I don't actually know if it matters to Amazing Spider-Man. But Mary Jane's story actually has an element that you need to read to probably read Amazing Spider-Man.
You just don't know enough of the Mary Jane story yet because we've only had 1 issue of it.
For sure, but there is an actual element of a story that progresses something. I don't know if Gold Goblin does that. Not saying it's a bad story. It's just not personal to Norman. The
more I read or think about it on how the Amazing Spider-Man has turned out so far since Zeb Wells has written it, the more I think it's actually, at this point in time, more of a Norman Osborn story. Because if you look at it, it's been all about mainly Norman Osborn.
Look at Peter's suit.
about him being a good guy and becoming the Gold Goblin. And then the spinoff is more directed at him at the moment than anything. While Spider-Man just seems stagnant, and Ben Reilly seems stagnant at just this quarrel that they're having with each other. And Mary Jane is right there because you're trying to figure out, well, what happened to Mary Jane in all this time, you know? But a lot of it does seem to revolve around Norman Osborn.
Yeah. And last art, a lot of it revolved around J. Jonah Jameson. So,
Yeah,
the last
true.
run. So
Yeah.
that's kind of funny.
So we'll see where it goes. All right. So that was Brant's number 5. Kat, what was yours?
Mine was Scarlet Witch. We already talked about it.
Already.
Right?
And my number 5 was, I forgot. Oh, Fantastic Four issue 3.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually like.
I'm shocked. I'm curious to see where Brant is. Is it too low or is it too high?
It's high.
It's
Like,
high
it's not anywhere
surprise.
near my top 5.
Yeah. So I like the story because I like Johnny in it. I just like how he was like this undercover guy and, you know, and stuff like that. And he was struggling there for a moment because he was by himself and he got this corrupt businessman that says, you're nobody without your team and you won't hurt me because you don't want to hurt anyone and this and that. And he's like, oh, you're right. So he winds up getting the business people that were working with him and stuff and to go against this corrupt guy. But the thing that I liked about it, I just felt that it was a little bit more, I don't know, for me, it was a little bit more faster paced than the other issues. But I like Johnny Storm as a character. I like his personality. And I don't know, there was something about it that I enjoyed it. I don't know what I can really pinpoint about it so much, but I was like, this is cool. This is different. Maybe it's because we don't get so many standalone issues with just Johnny. And maybe that's what I liked about it, you know? And then I'm like, okay, finally, it looks like we're going to get to the main meat of this story here in the next issue.
I agree. Like, I just like Johnny. And I think the difference between this issue than the Thing and Alicia and Sue and Reed is that they were two people. So it's like, oh yeah, like who is really the main character? John. It was just a very nostalgic issue. It felt old school. It was fun. I had a good time with it. Art was good. Like, I was pleasantly surprised by this one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay.
I'm ready.
Let's go.
I didn't hate the story in and of itself. And I like Johnny too. And I thought the art was nice. And I thought it was a fun, you know, goofy story, whatever. There was some cool moments in it. But it just reminded me how much I've disliked this run on Fantastic Four so far. And each issue is focusing on the different characters. It's not gelling for me. And hopefully next issue, when things do come back together, it will be different. I'll make my decision then whether I'm continuing on. But right now, I'm so done with this format that that it bores me a little bit, and I don't know where it's going. So
yeah, and I can totally understand that aspect of it. You know, like the thing is like the second issue was like a cookie cutter of the first issue, and that's what I didn't like so much about it. This one was a little bit different because it was just Johnny trying to deal with stuff without his family. And I thought that was fun. And just again, Johnny just being Johnny. And I thought he was comical. And that's what made me laugh so much. You know, he's growing that mustache, he's dyeing his hair, you know, and it just like I just thought it was hysterical, you know, just something that I don't know, is a little lighthearted. So but yeah, I agree
the overall
with you.
arc of him working at that place, I thought was like, oh yeah, like you said, it was lighthearted. It was just like, especially because all the other ones felt like so big and they were trying to be too big. Honestly, I was just like, okay, cool. This is just a fun one and done.
But now we need that story. Now that we got all 4 of them, now it needs to get going. And even on the letters page, it said no more foreshadowing. We're going to get started here. So, but I'm with Brant though on that. Like it needs to get going now. Okay. So we get an idea of what this whole ordeal is about. So we'll see. All right. So let's go forward. Let's move on to Dark Knights of Steel. This is issue 9.
Solid book, man. I just think it's such a it's a good book. I really think the war, you get to see the misunderstandings, and then right when you think you kind of figured out this book, you haven't, because you're like, oh, of course it's Martian Manhunter, and then you realize, oh, it's the White Martians, and
Yeah,
Alfred's a Martian
that was a
Manhunter.
nice-
What? Yeah,
That was a nice
so I
little
liked it.
twist. Yeah.
So yeah, I like that end too. You guys would be surprised, but this was not in my top 5 this time. It was
Wow.
my
Oh, damn.
number. Yeah, it was
I
my
didn't-
number.
I would say you
6.
read a lot of good books, but I know
This
that
was
you
my
didn't.
number 6 because when I was reading it, it was a lot of war. You know what I'm saying? And there wasn't, for me, there wasn't just as, there was moments, but there wasn't as much like of that, I don't know, that intense story that I really enjoyed leading up to this war, if that makes sense. And then we all had an idea that Martian Manhunter was somehow involved in this comic book, right? So I
Mhm.
guess that's what kind of took away the punch for me. I liked the twist, but it was just like you knew he was involved some way or shape or form. I almost would have liked it better if he wasn't, and it was this complete war without someone being transformed to do all these bad things, right? So, but it's still entertaining. I still liked it, and I'm so curious to see, how it goes forward because we still do have what 10 and 11 and 12, right? So we still have 3
Yeah,
more
we
issues.
have
Yeah.
a few more.
Yeah. So it's still a decent amount of story here to finish up with. So I'm curious now what's going to happen now that they know that the White Martians are behind everything. At least we think.
Yeah. I don't know. I enjoyed it because I mean you have to have that climax issue where you get to the meat of everything you've been building up to, and I thought that was this issue. But the twist on who Martian Manhunter actually was got me.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I wasn't
same.
expecting Alfred to be the Martian Manhunter, so that took me by complete surprise.
Well, it
And it's like
obviously took them all by surprise also too.
exactly, and now it's like, oh, of course it's White Martians. Why wouldn't it be White Martians? Because thinking about it after the fact. But yeah, I enjoyed the twist.
It's kind of
People are
like
dying, man. People are
Yeah,
dying because of
left
the
and
Martian
right.
stuff. And now
Yeah.
people are doing bad things because they thought someone else did a bad thing, but they didn't.
Exactly.
So-
they're now all going to rally together and defeat the White Martians. That's probably
Well,
what's
we'll
going to
see.
happen.
But is it too late? Because
Right.
they've done wrong things now, and be like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, maybe the
Exactly.
Martian Manhunter did that, but you did that out of reaction,
How
Mhm.
long has Martian Manhunter been Alfred for that they did not know this? Or
Yeah.
let's look at it this way. Maybe Martian Manhunter is not the good guy. Right? Maybe
that's
he
true
did
too, yeah.
maybe he did something to the real Alfred. Because
Mhm.
Yeah.
where is real Alfred then?
Unless there is no real Alfred in this timeline.
Mhm.
Man, that would be crazy because then he would be disguising himself all this time.
Yeah.
So there's something still not right there. You know what I'm saying? Where there's something missing.
Yeah, there's definitely something missing, and we had the alluding to it by Constantine saying none of this was in the prophecy. Where's all this coming from? So there's definitely another element that we're missing to this whole story. So
Right.
it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, cool. And the Joker was weird though in this issue. The Joker lantern, he's just like
wasn't really
there.
doing anything.
And then he just like flies away. He's like, run away. You know?
yeah.
Like,
He's like, no, Martians, I can't deal with this.
yeah, I'm
Just
like,
made a
okay.
cameo.
It's weird. All right. So good boy. It is a good boy. I love, like I said, it was my number 6. I just it was weird because it's like I kind of knew that Martian Manhunter was going to be in this book.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what shape or form. So maybe it just lost that element of surprise for me a little bit. All right. So let's talk about Radiant Pink. You guys read it. I told you I don't think I was going to buy the second issue, and I'm curious to hear what you think of it.
I thought it was okay. I think there is very much a point A to point B to kind of get these two romantic characters to talk to each other and kind of see where they're from different walks of life. But not much happened.
Not much happened, but at the same time, I kind of like the way that they did handle that because they weren't like really getting along, and they were really sarcastic and sharp with each other at times, and I thought that was an interesting direction to take it, and I appreciated that it wasn't just kind of love at first sight kind of thing. and the reveal that she had one of those vests, and I thought they were going to drag that out a little bit. So I was pleasantly surprised that they just went right ahead and revealed that at the end of this issue. So
I like the friend's reaction. I thought that was kind of the best part, where you get to like see the real world. You're like, okay, so she's missed.
And there were some fun parts too, like they're jumping around to different worlds, and there's like that gooey bear
some
and
humor.
stuff like that, and she's all like, "Oh, it's so squishy," and then it's like puking acid glitter at them and stuff. So it's some fun stuff. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun.
All right, cool. Real quick comment. We got Comic Toby says, I made room in my home for about 8 more short boxes this year, so I'm optimistic about good stuff coming out. I make room like box by box. That's how I do it. I don't buy 8 boxes at a time. Maybe I should.
I can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't think I can predict how many comics I'm going to buy for the year.
It's like funny. I let my comics pile up first before I buy another short box. I'll sit there for weeks and be like, I need another short box. I need another short box. But you know what I can buy instead of that short box?
More comics.
Yeah.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Do it.
Exactly. All right. Let's move on to number 4. Kat, what was yours?
Radiant Pink. We already talked about it.
Mine too, actually.
It was?
Yeah.
That's funny. My number 4 was Joe Fixit, issue 1. Did you read it, Brant, or not? Because I did recommend it to you.
Yeah, I did read it.
Okay.
Because you recommended it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it was good. It was fun. I mean, obviously one of those period piece things, back in the whatever.
So we're talking about like 80s, 90s comics,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Here we go. So
exactly.
that reminded you of Joe Fixit back in the day, as he's like this casino guy, and he's a different persona, and he's in charge of it, and Kingpin wants him in charge. He wants in charge of this casino. So he confronts the Hulk, and the Hulk kicks his ass, and he kicks him out. And Spider-Man's following him to see what's going on. And Spider-Man all of a sudden is now with Joe Fixit. And he's like, you're staying with Joe Fixit. You're going to go to your room. And he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, they put him up in a suite and gave him
he gave him his own room.
Right.
And then the funny thing is at the end of it, which I literally laughed out loud at this part. Like, they're in the limousine, and Kingpin's guy is just like, he says something to him, and he's like, shut up. And he gives him an elbow.
He says, you have a little blood just right there. And Kingpin's like,
yeah. And his neck is completely sideways. He snaps his neck, and he's like, turn around, we're going back. And I was just like, I don't know. I just found that scene so hilarious. And I just wanted to read more after that.
The funny thing is, nobody recognizes this the Hulk. And I'm like, how do you not know it's the Hulk? What the heck?
Yeah, they're all making these things. They're like, oh, Joe Fixit's here. It's like they're expecting the Hulk to be green and dumb, and they think he's something completely different.
I guess. And the weird thing, I mean, and I think that made it more enjoyable for me, is that I didn't really read any of the Joe Fixit stuff when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't really into Hulk. It took me a long time to get into Hulk. And Planet Hulk was like when I got into Hulk. So that was like a whole different side of Hulk that I hadn't really experienced. So it was fun for me. And of course you start off the book with Spider-Man. That's already a win.
And it's very 90s that way too, because Spider-Man was in everything.
Right, exactly.
So very cool. All right. So that was my number 4. So let's see. We're talking about Jesus, Spider-Man. Number 4.
I got this book because there were so little books out this week. You know what?
Goodness.
I don't want this book on my pull list. I really don't.
It's not good.
Look, it's not. It just. The only thing I'll give the compliment of it is that Spider-Man wasn't in it, so they were able to focus a little bit on other characters, but there was no enjoyment.
But then you get this. What's the other guy at the end? Like
other Spider-Man, right? There was this other.
Oh yeah, the
original Spider-Man.
The weird version, Peter Palmer or something.
Yeah,
right.
Oh God!
It's like, was he really called that before? Like,
right? And then you got the other
guy.
Then you got the other Peter that at the very, very end that had this tube of webbing or something like that, and he has he's in a like a brace or whatever it is. The very last page, Kat.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was the actual Spider-Man or if that was related to Peter Palmer. I wasn't actually sure.
It's a different
Yeah.
guy. I think it's even a different guy
Across
there.
town, still in the 616. So
Okay.
I don't know.
It's-
Look, if I have another week where I have 8 comics, I guess I'm getting it again. But I hope I have another week where I have 15. That way I don't have to get it again.
There's so many of them now. You don't even know who's who anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's been my problem since issue 2.
It's like, what is even happening though at this moment? Do you even know what the
Oh.
book was about?
I mean,
Can't tell
it's
ya.
like it's wasps attacking spiders. That's just the whole premise of it, right? It's like, we're changing all the spiders to wasps, and the wasps are going to take over the world. That's the whole story.
If Mark Bagley quit Spider-Man drawing, I understand why now. After this, because he's probably never had to draw so many Spider-Man in one series ever. Absolutely crazy, man. All right. Children of the Black Sun, issue 1. Kat didn't read this. Brant and I
did
read this
not.
book. I thought it was good. It kind of gives you the Children of the Corn vibes type of thing. That's what it reminded me of. But what this was about, Kat, was about this this sun that just rose one day. It was a black sun, and it was creating this deep, dark depression where people were like, this is the end of the world, and they're committing suicide, and the world is dying. And the next day, the black sun went away, and the regular sun came back. There's like nothing ever happened. And this happened again later on. I think it was a few years later, like 4 years later. No one ever really knows why this has happened. But what has happened is that women who were pregnant wound up giving birth to these babies that are called children of the sun, children of the sun. And they're born with like white hair, red eyes. And you have this younger generation that doesn't know, they feel like they're completely normal. And then you have the second generation that realizes that there's something more, that they have these types of powers. And you see that towards the end of this issue. And you're just kind of like,
binos with
yeah,
powers.
yeah, exactly. It's exactly what it is. And it was an interesting book. And I liked it. And I'm going to check out issue 2.
What I liked was there was almost a religious aspect to it where like they didn't trust these kids, and they like prayed against them and stuff like this, and they wouldn't let their kids interact with them, and said they were evil, and you couldn't go out because they could feel it was about to happen again, and so they wouldn't let them play with the kids or interact.
Reminded
with them.
them of the event.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a religious bent and a little bit of like a prejudice, and that layered the story a little bit more for me. So if it didn't have those elements, I would have been like, okay, it's just some creepy kids that come out from the sun. But it was a nicely layered story. I didn't love the art. I thought it was okay, but it kind of fit the vibe that the book was going for, though. A little sketchy, a little stretched out, a little stylized.
Yeah,
but,
the artwork was a little weird. Yeah,
but an interesting concept. I really was intrigued by the concept.
Yeah, I did too. It was better actually than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, what is this going to be about? But I found myself hooked. I had trouble though reading that font, man. That font is just really small in those word bubbles. I was just like, it's extra small. Being that, I can't see so close these days anymore. It's making it harder,
And there was a lot of text on some of those pages.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so now let's move on to our number 3. Kat, what was yours?
Mine was, let me see. I think it was Gold Goblin issue 3.
Okay, Brant?
Secret Invasion number 3. So not quite as strong as last issue, but
mine too.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. But I like the confrontation between Maria Hill and Iron Man, and it wasn't like what we thought. Like first we thought Iron Man's a Skrull, right? And then
Yeah.
they revealed that no, he's just hired a bunch of Skrulls, and he's got this whole army of Skrulls, and he's trusted them, and you know, you have this whole conversation between the two going back and forth through the issue as he's trying to explain it to Maria, and she's getting angrier and more distrustful of Tony and these Skrulls, and by the end of the issue, she's just like, "Sorry, Tony."
You start
Can't let him live.
unloading on them.
Boom, 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 and like
Oh
mows
my
him down.
god, I
It's like,
couldn't
what?
believe it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I, at first though, when she was jacking him in the face and everything, I still thought that maybe he was a Skrull, but then it really he wasn't. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. I'm like, he's really trying to do a real Tony Stark thing here,
yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah,
But I actually, by the time I got done with it, I felt bad for those Skrulls,
yeah.
because they actually are trying to do something different. They're just people trying to integrate themselves into the world, trying to do something good. They're not really the soldiers or the lieutenants or the ones in charge. And then Maria's like, nope, you're dead. Boom, 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 like you
Yeah.
said. And what I like about this book, though, is you can kind of, this is not really an event book. It's like self-contained. And
Mhm.
if you have event books or something like that, that's how they should be. They should be just self-contained, 1 through 6, 1 through 5, whatever it is. And that's it. Get rid of those tie-ins. Because this is, you either want to read it or you don't have to read it, and it doesn't interfere with anything else. And that's what I like about this. And this story is a lot better than I ever thought it was going to be.
Mhm. Yeah, totally.
So good stuff there.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to a book you guys read. I don't read it. It's Parker Girls. This is issue 4.
You don't really need to. I feel like this honestly, I feel like is the weakest I've seen Terry Moore's like books to be. I think it kind of lost its focus. With Serial, it kind of started there where it's like, oh, let's focus on this murder mystery. And what I love about Terry Moore is his characters and his character work, and I'm just not really seeing that here.
I honestly don't remember like what we're trying to accomplish with this book.
No, I don't either. I think there
That's
was
the
a
problem.
girl that
Yeah, she
killing
she
people.
maybe, I don't know. It started off with that girl that fell off the yacht, and that's where
Yeah.
we pick it up here, and they find her, and like are still trying to solve that murder. But I really don't remember like what the purpose of this whole investigation is for. Like, what are they going at? What are they trying to figure out? I don't remember. And delays aren't helping it either. So it's hard to focus on it, and I'm getting like a little bit lost with who's who. For some reason, I mean, I was happy to see Kachu in this issue, but there was so little of her in it, and I don't know. It's not. I don't know. I kind of agree with you, Kat. It's just not doing it for me, unfortunately.
And I don't want to drop it because I just read so many of his stuff, and like he's such an indie creator. Like I want to support his stuff, but yeah, I don't know. You said, delays are not helping. This book was delayed for like 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Every week it's like, oh, is it got to come out this week? Is it this week?
Right, exactly. And I mean, I love his world. I love his characters like you, and it's just, this one just isn't quite doing it. It wasn't what I expected from this book, I think. So.
Yeah, which I thought was going to be like the Parker Girls. I thought it was going to be that, like, their organization. And
exactly. Yeah.
All right. So there was this comment before. Black Sun is translated from a European graphic novel series that got a bigger size. So when they shrink it, font is small to read. And this book is done by Ablaze, right? So I think that's why a lot of their books come from the European side of things, and then they reprint them for here.
Which is, the sizing of pages are different in Europe and America. So that makes sense.
All right. So then we're going to dive into number 2 and then our number 1. So, Kat, number 2.
Fantastic Four. So Brent, be even more shocked.
So what is yours, Brent?
It's only Teenage Wasteland number 2. So if that's what I think that's the title. Anyway, I enjoy this series. I don't know. I really like it. I know you didn't love it, Kat, but
no,
that first issue.
Not my favorite.
But I really enjoyed this issue, and we finally got to see the Rangers pop up at the end, and they're kind of tracking them, and and all that. Was that this issue? That was this issue, right, Mike? Did you read
Well,
this?
No,
You didn't read this? I thought you read this.
no.
Okay. For some reason, I thought I saw you talk about it somewhere. But anyway, am I getting books confused?
No, I don't think so. I don't think. Which you thought?
Am I thinking about a book from last week?
Are you thinking about Power Rangers?
No. Hold on. What's yours, Mike?
My number 2. So it's not going to stall that much time. My number 2 is Dark Web Gold Goblin issue 3.
Okay.
You're up, Brant. What's your number 2?
That's a good question because I was thinking of a completely different book. I don't know what my number 2 is anymore.
Oh, which book were you thinking?
I didn't even read this book. What am I talking about? I was thinking of that Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, but that was from like last week.
Oh,
yeah,
I
that
didn't
one.
like that one.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't.
last week. Yeah, okay.
That's
So
what I thought
everything
you were
yeah.
talking about.
Wow, everything has shifted. So now Batman is my number 5, or no, not Batman. Scarlet Witch is my number 5. Gold Goblin is my number 4. Radiant Pink's my number 3, and Secret Invasion is my number 2. So sorry about that. Wow.
At least Batman got its slot.
Yeah.
Batman fit in there. Batman's like, hell yeah.
Yeah, that Teenage Wasteland's like a Dark Horse book. I didn't even get that. I don't know where that's on my list.
See, I thought you were talking about the Jason Aaron books. That's why.
Right.
No, he said
the
Teenage
Jason Aaron
Wasteland. I'm like, I don't read that.
Yeah, I know. I don't either. I don't. I was scrambling trying to get my books ranked at the end. I guess I just pulled from an old list or something.
Teenage Wasteland came out 15 years ago, and it was your number 2 then.
All right, so then let's do number 1. What was yours, Brant?
Dark Knights of Steel, of course.
There we go. Dark Knights of Steel. Cat, I'm assuming that was yours.
Yeah.
Mine was actually Gangster Ass Barista issue 1.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah,
That's
I really enjoyed it. My only thing that I didn't like, I don't want to say I didn't like it. I just wish that it was colored, because I thought that the book actually had really good art, and I would love to see that book colored. The other thing that there was a lot of dialogue in the book, and it took away from the art. But I never felt bored by the dialogue. Like, I loved learning about this character, Trinity, and what she was thinking. On where she came from, how she has this checkered past. She works for this coffee place. There's this bad thing that happens where this guy loses a bag of money because there was an altercation in the place, and she finds the money and she's like, why not take it? Spend a few dollars of it, plan on trying to keep it. These guys are going after the money. She sells her coworker. She's like, throws him under the bus saying, hey, maybe she has it. There were so many good elements to that story that I really enjoyed. And I'm looking forward to the next issue of it. And I thought the character was hilarious too.
If you want to hear something hysterical, because I kind of just forgot this until you mentioned the character's name. Trinity is in By Visibility Still By. So Gangster Ass Barista is in my book.
Nice.
So I forgot that was the
That's
character
cool.
from the Gangster Ass Barista. But yeah, Pat wrote a 4-page story that was in that world and wrote it for By Visibility because Gangster Ass Barista is a bi character. So forgot it was that character. So that is very cool.
That's funny.
No.
Yeah. So really good book. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a blast. And I'm looking forward to the second issue. So I like their personality. I just like how she's kind of just like this whatever type of chick, and it's just like, yeah, I don't care about the customers in the store. Gives a crap about them. She went on about this thing about, like regular, large and small coffees. And people were like, yeah, this is just like, give me the regular. And she's like, regular is this size. Regular doesn't mean large or whatever it is. It's so hilarious. He keeps on going on about it. Great book though, man. That surprised me. And that's what reminds me of like why I liked Patrick Shan's writing to begin with, why I loved Robin Hood when he wrote it for Zenescope, and why I liked Grim Fairy Tales when he wrote it, because he just has a natural way of writing certain characters. So really good stuff.
And just to mention, like, obviously, like, when he was in direct market stuff with Zetascope, it was awesome to see. And I know he's still doing Zetascope stuff, but I truly believe, like, Pat Chan is one of the most successful people in comics right now, like, profit-wise and just, like, looking at all the stuff he's doing. Look, he made $100,000 on his last Kickstarter. Like, it's wild. Like, he's doing some amazing things with comics. So,
yeah, absolutely. Parker Luck. Here, look at this one. Did anyone read The Joker, The Man Who Laughed, issue 5 with the
I heard about it
story?
No,
I heard that too.
I didn't.
heard it happened, but I don't know anything about it, so I can't give any thoughts.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't get it. So, all right. This is, that's what he said in there. He goes, regular. It's not an effing size. That's what she said in there. All right. So that's all the comics. Those are number one. So I guess, Brant, we're going to hand it over to you. We're going to do the most anticipated now.
Yeah, let's do it. So, all right. Let's see what we got. We got a couple of things to cross over here and there. So let's see where we want to start. Let's start with you, Kat. Just read off your top 3 and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so my top 3 is Black Cloak issue 1. That's number 3. Number 2 is Specs issue 3, and number 1 is Mary Jane and Black Cat issue 2.
All right. I forget how we did it last week. Did we just
So we
all
read it
them and
all
then we go
off?
into it? Okay.
I think
That's-
so, yeah.
Yeah. So Mike, go ahead and read yours off then.
Specs issue 3, Mary Jane Black Cat issue 2. Kat and I agree on that one for the most part. And then, like I talked about earlier, Nemesis Reloaded issue 1.
Yeah. All right. And mine is The Flash number 790, Black Cloak number 1, and Mary Jane and Black Cat number 2. So Nemesis Reloaded would have made my list, but I knew that you were going to put it on yours, Mike. So I purposely left it off. So
did you read the original volume?
I don't remember if I did or not. I thought I did, but I don't. It's been so long that I don't remember if I actually did
Very
or
long
not.
time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I know I read some of his stuff that was coming out at the time. I just don't remember if that was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So
I remember
definitely
this when I read it. I was like,
yeah,
wow, they went there with that. It pushes the envelope for sure.
yeah. I mean, a lot of his stuff does, but for sure that one, I remember it being gruesome. If I didn't read it all, I know I read some of it. I do remember like certain scenes are like popping out in my head. But yeah, I don't remember the story well enough.
Yeah,
so
me
I might have to
neither.
refresh. Yeah,
I still have it somewhere in my independent collection. Like I would love to go back and read it.
yeah. So that'll be interesting to see how it holds up if it's as good as the original. So let's talk about. Well, I'll just get this one out of the way because I'm the only one that put it on. The Flash 790 is like the start of the 1 minute war, which
Something
I thought
big happens in it.
Yeah, something big happens, and I thought it was an interesting premise for a story, especially with speedster characters, that you're doing this whole war that takes place within 60 seconds. I think that's a really cool concept, so definitely going to check that out.
It seems like a good jumping off point.
That.
Yeah,
I'm gonna read it.
Maybe I'll try it. I just got to remind myself to buy it now.
Yeah. Flash has been pretty good lately, but this is going to pick it up to another notch. Yeah. So let's talk about Black Cloak, Kat. That's the new Kelly Thompson book coming from Substack, right?
Yeah, I actually reread it, so I won't give too much of an opinion. I
nice.
also already read Flash, so I have a busy day tomorrow, so I was like, all right, let me read some issues first.
Hopefully these were 2 of the good ones.
I will say one of them is mid, and one I was really surprised by.
Okay,
I'll say that.
Cool.
So
Gotcha.
there you go. No, they weren't the bad ones I read.
All right.
I will
Fair
say
enough.
Black Cloak is long. It's a like 60 something page book. So like
really?
read it
Okay.
first. Yeah, read it first. It honestly I had to read it and then read it again because I was like, I feel like I missed something. And I read it again and I enjoyed it more the second time.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm excited for you guys to read it. But I am
for sure.
when I wrote this list, I very much That was my number 3.
I have a lot of
because
books too. I
it's
think I
Kelly
have like
Thompson.
18 books, 19 or 20
I
books.
don't have a
with them.
ton tomorrow. Oh no, I do. I actually do have a lot tomorrow. I do. Yeah. The week after, I don't think I have a lot.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens with that. Specs number 3. You
Such
both
a
have
good
on your
book.
list. So yeah, it is a good book.
I
Yeah.
loved issue
Oh,
1 and
man.
2.
Last issue was really good. The kids going to jail.
Right. You got
Mhm.
Carter off to jail. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's
Thank
so
you, Bob.
sad because obviously it's dealing with racism in there. And, and it's just like, you feel bad for his, I forget, Teddy and who? Teddy and,
I always forget their names too. I know
yeah, I can't
Teddy's
remember
one
the
of
other one.
them.
Yeah.
oh, I don't remember. But
I don't either.
yeah, that he wished for his, his friend to not go away, and then he winds up that he's not going to go away. He's going to go to jail. So, like, it is crazy. Man, it's sad. It's a crazy book, though. I'm so curious, like, what's going to happen with all that. Do we know how many issues this is?
I feel like it's 5.
4 or 5, I would say, probably.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find it real quick. But anyway, yeah, no, it's not, again, it's not the book that I thought it was going to be, but it's so much better than what I thought it was going to be. So yeah, so really strong book. So the last one on our list is the one that we all had, which was Mary Jane and Black Cat issue number 2.
How not? I mean,
There's
issue
a
1,
lot.
it's
There's
surprising.
a lot there. So people were saying that she was wearing a bracelet. They noticed that
Yeah,
she
I
was
saw that
wearing
in the
a particular
comments.
bracelet. Yeah. So
I mean, she can't take it off.
where's
Maybe.
that from?
I don't
Where
know.
did she get it?
I feel like Mephisto has to do with something, but
Oh God.
yeah, he always
That's all
does.
we need. That's all you need. You want to see people get wild up. Let's bring Mephisto in these comic book now. Oh
be
man, that'd be
surprised.
hilarious.
They won't do anything with it, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh God.
You think
I just don't get
Mephisto
how
gave her the bracelet?
She wore that
What
freaking
happened?
neck. Would you say,
Huh?
Brian?
I didn't.
What'd
I
you
didn't
think?
hear what Brad said.
I say you think Mephisto gave her the bracelet? Is that what
Oh,
you're
yeah.
saying?
Oh yeah, it's like an
She already-
engagement, actually.
She already wore that necklace from the X-Men gala. That was more
Oh,
of
that's yeah.
That's true. It could be more
Oh,
of me. It's not Mary Jane at all.
It's so funny, dude. Yeah, right. How does she have like slot power too, which is hilarious? Like I just
Yeah.
don't get that, Turns into
getting-
a pudding monster and
I'm excited though. I just
Psychic
like really
powers.
liked that first issue, so I'm very excited for the second one.
Yeah,
it's
for
Jim
sure.
McKay, man.
Specs is 4 issues. So
4?
Four, damn.
Yeah.
Oh
that
shit.
sucks.
So what? We get
2 more. That's it.
Yeah, this tomorrow, and then the last issue. Yeah.
I guess we would have gotten the answer when we read that tomorrow, because then been like to be concluded in issue.
Right. Man, it feels like it needs more.
Yeah, I hope
Maybe
it
there'll
doesn't
be
rush
volume
the
2.
ending.
Yeah.
maybe it's a volume 1. Maybe it will
Maybe.
continue.
I hope
Maybe.
so. I hope so.
I don't know
'Cause
how
I
the
get-
sales or the reception has been.
Because I get like a lot of now you get some of these indie books that do 4 issues and then they move on to like a next volume. So
Yeah.
let's see what happens with it.
But that's it for the most anticipated.
All right, that's cool. And that's all we got, right? We're all done for the night.
Yep,
So
yep,
as
yep.
of right now, it is officially New Comic Book Day. Unfortunately, there's no new comic book shops that are open yet to go to buy your comics. Unless you got a 24-hour shop, which I don't think anybody would do that. But
No,
anyway,
that seems like they're losing money.
that's dedication right there, right? Unless their comic book shop is their house.
Mm. Also feels like a weird business, but
All right, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed tonight's show. If you ever have any other topics that you want us to discuss or maybe make a theme of a show, you can just leave it in the comments section below, post live the show. And, we can definitely take that into consideration. And we love you being here. And of course, guys, happy New Comic Book Day. And
Real quick,
if you go ahead.
Before you wrap, Mike, I just want to tell everybody I got a Kickstarter launching tomorrow. TorchNightGames.com/Oz will take you there. We're doing a new 1,000-piece puzzle. We also have a couple of comics available on it and some other stuff. So check that out.
And I got gay pins on Kickstarter, so go check that out. I don't know if
All
that
right.
that'll be for your audience, but maybe you got a friend or you're queer, go check out some gay pins. You're doing well, so.
All right. So there you guys have it. Of course, you know what you got to do. You got to subscribe to Comic Book Weekly's YouTube channel so you can watch every episode. Just go on a binge party with your friend and watch it. And subscribe to Comic Book Corner 2.0 so you can watch some of my other content on there as well. Don't forget to hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications from us. Give it a thumbs up. Follow both channels on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, not TikTok, and who knows other YouTube social media stuff there is or whatever. But I'm done talking. So, guys, have a great night. We'll see you next week. Happy New Comic Book Day. Later.